I'm gonna full screen this thing so you can see it one more time, and we're gonna put that to the right side, and we're gonna start from scratch in our VS Code. So I'm gonna create a new folder here, and we'll just call it clone Kazi site. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. Here I will create a new folder, call it styles, and inside of styles I'll create a new file called styles.css. You should be familiar with this now. And then inside of clone Kazi I'll create a new file, and I'll call it index.html, and we'll get started writing code. Now in our Chrome, I will go here, I'll open and clone Kazi site index.html. I'll open that in Chrome, so you should see this blank page right here, and we'll get started. Okay, so first we'll start off with this headline, and we'll go from there. Okay, and now I'm literally thinking about it kind of from scratch again. Okay, so before this video I tried to clear my mind so I could start with as blank of a slate as possible and think my way through it kind of out loud, and you could work alongside me on this. Alright, so I'm just gonna go through this page a little bit. Okay, so I see that this is probably paragraph, and this is some kind of a header. So what header is this? I'll hit inspect and just find out real quick. So it's H1, and here's some styling that is being used for H1 that I can see. And let's look at the font. So the fonts that are being used is Railway Sans Serif and all of this. Okay, cool. So now this part is important. I'm gonna try to actually just copy this part. Okay, and you know, again, I can tick this mark off. Is that a right way to say it? Tick this mark off, whatever. So I can tick this mark off, and you can see that when I change it, how it affects the writing. So this is with the Railway Sans Serif font family on, and when I turn this off, I can't see much of a difference there, but in my paragraphs I can hopefully see the difference here. Okay, one is readable, but it's a little close, and this gives it a nice little breathing room. So now I know what line height is used for. Font weight, you know, this makes it weigh a little bit more. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna kind of paste that in here. All right, now what I know, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go in my styles.css. Okay, I'm gonna paste that in here. So now one thing I already know is that I'm gonna have this class, and it's called like our content. You could call it whatever you want. You could call it something totally different. And this is the font family. This is the line height, font weight, and you know, let's see what this max width stuff is all about, right? So notice that when I put it on, look at what it does, right? Changes the width here and padding at the top. So we'll try to build this from scratch as we go. Okay, I'm going to remove this, but I know a few things already, and we need to get the Railway font. So we'll go to fonts.google.com. I will go to look up Railway right here. I will hit the plus sign. It copied it. Okay, and I'll click it. I will grab the import code. I'll paste it in my styles.css all the way at the top, and then this is the font family. Okay, so I'm gonna go in here, and I'll say that anything that goes in the body, actually give it that font style. Okay, so I'll say give it that font. Now let's go to our HTML code. I'll hit doc. I'll delete these for now, and we'll call this Kazi's website clone, or Kazi's website. You can call it your own website. And when I refresh this, you'll see at the top, the tab now says Kazi's website, so that's good. All right, so let's get the copy from here, the headline, and then we'll just put the H1, we'll paste the headline, okay? And I'm gonna refresh. Now, going into my style sheet, I will make sure that my body has the Railway font, so font family Railway, okay? I have this, Now I'll refresh, and that's weird. There are a few problems that we notice here. First of all, it starts from all the way to the left, goes all the way to the right, and notice this starts in the middle. And also, it doesn't look like it has the railway font. So what's going on there, right? Because like even if I delete this and hit save and come here and refresh, it looks the same. And when I do this and save and refresh, it still looks the same. So what's the deal? Well, it's because I haven't linked the style sheet yet. So in my head, I'm going to go and I'll say link, and I'll simply link that style sheet. So now when I hit refresh, you can see that the railway font is coming in. And if I actually right click and hit inspect, it should show me that the railway font is coming in. Okay, so now I have the font looking somewhat, good. Now let's do a few more things. So my font looks good, but it's still reading a lot from the left and then reading it all the way to the right. So it seems a little too much. So what I will do is I'll say like pad it a little bit. Okay, so let me do padding left, and I'll do 40 pixels. Let's come here and let's refresh. So you can see it added a little bit of padding here and it pushed it to the right. Now padding can be cool, but the problem is that when you on a mobile device, it can look pretty weird. It's like reading every single word on its own line, and it's okay in terms of centering something. So what I'll do is I'll give it a max width of say 200 pixels. Let's just try 200 pixels, and then I'll say margin is auto. Okay, so this is a cool way of making things centered. So you can see that it gave it a width, and then the rest of it just says do it auto. So it kind of starts it from the middle, and that's essentially the width that it has. Now let's give it a little bit more width. So I'll do 400 and hit refresh. Now it reads it in the middle pretty much perfectly, but we need to give it a little bit more. Like for example, you can read business and build an audience on the same line, except business and build an audience for us reads on two different lines. So now I know that I still have to make it so it has a little bit more width, and let's try 600 here. Okay, products and services. Cool. It looks like it's reading in a similar fashion. Okay, how to build your authority. Great. Let's see if anything else needs changing. So ours is really at the top, if you can see, and this one kind of has like some space from the top. This is just completely touching it. So we need to add some padding on the top. Okay, padding top, and let's add about 20 pixels. Let's refresh. Cool, and it looks like it gave it a little bit of room, and that's kind of what we want. And then this image, on this website, when I right click, I can actually inspect the image, and this gives me the URL for the image. So I'll just use this URL, and I'll go in my index, and then I will say image. I'll paste that image in, and I'll hit refresh, or oops, refresh. So you can see that this image right now looks really, really huge, and that's not what we want. So in my image, I'm going to add in a height attribute, and I'll just say 500, and I'll add in a width attribute, and we'll just give it 300. Okay, and you can put quotes around it or not, doesn't really matter. Okay, so now it looks a little bit more normal, but it looks a little bit squished. So we'll give it a little bit more, 400. See how that looks compared to it. Still doesn't look that good. When I inspect this image, I see that it's a 700 and width 500. So I'm going to do that for mine too. 700, give it 500, save, refresh, and now it looks a little bit better, right? And even if I full screen the thing, it still looks in the center, and even if I make it shorter, half the screen, it still looks like it's in center. Okay, cool. So we got the image. Now what else do we need? We need to add the page copy, right? All of this copy right here. And what I recommend is just straight up copying all of this like this, or what you can do is go to the page source and copy it from there. So that way it'll copy all the line breaks and everything, because there's some line breaks in here, okay? So if you spend time doing all of that, it might take you a second, though it could be good practice. But whoops, I'm gonna go here, I'll say view page source, and everything starting from this p tag, here's what you're right now, all the way to this p tag, I'll just copy and I'll paste right here. I'll hit save, we'll go to our website and refresh, and you can see now that that copy is on our page. Okay, cool. So it's looking good, except the lines in between make it a little bit harder to read, so we need to give it a little bit more line height. Okay, so I'll go to my styles at CSS, and we'll add some line height. So I'll say line height 1.2 em. Refresh. Okay, do anything, let's just do something crazy, 4 em. And you can see that there's a huge difference here, right? Let's try 2. Fresh. Okay, 2 is looking pretty good. Let's try 2.3. And now it looks like the page has some room to breathe. Maybe it's even too much. It just depends on your taste. But when I read these paragraphs, I think it's good to give it a little bit breathing room. So far, I like how things look. They look really good. But I feel that reading it, this text doesn't look like it's powerful. It looks very thin. And I don't really like, my eyes don't really enjoy reading it as much as they should. So what I would want to do, honestly, is probably make them weigh a little bit more. So you can see that when I do 900, it just becomes darker. And if I do like 100 and go here, it becomes really light. So I like how 900 looks, okay? Maybe you can even go 950. That's up to you. But I personally prefer my text to be kind of dark and feel like it has weight. So when somebody's reading it, they can go, okay, there's like power behind it. Okay, so the text is looking pretty good. The fonts are looking pretty good. Now I just need to add that little this thing and then the call to action. Okay, so first we're gonna do that call to action part. This part I'm gonna add at the end because this requires Bootstrap. So I'll show you that later. But first, let's just go and add this thing. So under this p tag, I will add an h2 because that's not an h1. Okay, notice, and save that copy, hit refresh, and okay, I got this. That's good. And now I just need to make sure that I have I'm gonna again add this at the end. You can add this from the regular forms that I showed you, so you can certainly do that for now. Just leave it blank, say input is a text or email, and we could put the placeholder to be email address. Okay, and then underneath we can say button and the button can be called gimme. Whoops. So here you saw that, whoops, I have the email address and then it says gimme right there. Okay, so I'm just putting like a basic form right now. Later you can make the form cooler. Like if you want to do something like where I hover over this button, maybe it turns orange. That's not that hard to do, right? I can just say something like button on hover, make the color orange or something. right? So now it changes the font color to be orange. Let's try if we can do background color. Okay, and now the entire button turns orange. So you can do something like that for now, just, yeah, or not, doesn't really matter. We're gonna again create the final version of this at the end. We're not gonna pay too much attention to that now. So our page is looking clean, very readable, very nice. Now let's add that pattern in the background. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just grab I'll look up minimalistic background patterns, and I'll just kind of see what comes up. Where I got it from was like this subtle patterns thing, and so you can get that one, or you can get this tic-tac-toe one. To be honest, I like it a lot. I might even like it more. So you can actually preview them too, which is awesome. If you hit preview, you can see in the back. Pretty cool. So you can have this one too, but that's a little too much. So I'll hit download. And now that it's downloaded, what I'll do is in here, I'll create a new folder. I'll just call it images. Okay. And I'll take this image, okay, the tic-tac-toe image. I'll go in that folder, HTML crash course, clone Kazi site. I'll go in images and just paste it in here. Okay, you can even link to the online image, but you can just do it locally too. That's totally fine. We'll go back, and inside the body, I'll say background image, and I'll use URL. And since styles is inside here, notice that next to styles.css, there are no other files. Okay, so if I from styles.css say, hey, go to images, and then inside of images get the pattern image, it's going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't know where images is. So we need to give this a path. Okay, an absolute path or a relative path. So for example, right, if you are in your house right now, you have Starbucks to the right of you, what I'll tell you is like, hey, leave your home, walk to the right, and Starbucks is right there. That's an example of a relative path. Okay, another example would be if you have Panera Bread to the left of you, I'll be like, walk downstairs, go to the left, Panera Bread is right there. Now, if I have to give you an absolute path, I might say, hey, on 2040, Hollywood Street, that's where Starbucks is, or that's where Panera Bread is. Now, that's the absolute path. No matter where you are in the world, in the country, in the state, you know where that address is. So just like that on your computer, each thing has a relative path and an absolute path. So what do I mean by that? For example, this going from, if you're in this index file, the relative path to the styles.css, it's simply styles/styles.css. Okay, it's a relative path. But if I want to get the absolute path, you can even see it right now. When I hover over it, it shows me. But the absolute path actually says, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I'll open up my terminal so you can see this more clearly. All right, so I'll go into my GitHub folder, I'll go into my HTML crash course folder, I'll go into clone Kazi folder, and to get into styles, I can just do cd styles, okay, which means change directory into styles. So I can do this, cd styles, and hit styles, and hit enter, and I'll go into it. Or I can go inside of it in another way. Okay, so check it out. When I do pdw, here's my absolute path right now, and I'm gonna now go into styles. Now when I do pwd, you can see that my full address in this location is user/cleverprogrammer/github/html crash course/clone Kazi_site/styles. So that's another. So that's so you just saw I got into styles by just doing cd styles. Now when I do cd, and let's say I'm home, I'm really far away. I can even go inside of styles directly in one go instead of going into one folder, then another folder, then another folder. I can just go straight to this entire address. I can just do this. I can say cd, paste that address, hit enter. I'm in styles again. Okay, so it doesn't matter where I was in the first place. Now, because I'm in my Clone Kazi site and I want to get access to that image, which is in images right here, tic-tac-toe, the first thing I actually need to do, okay, whoops, actually let's go in here. So I'm in styles.css. I need to first go back a folder, so then I'll be in Clone Kazi site directory. Then I need to go inside of images and then get access to the folder. So here's how I'll do it. I'm going to do ... and that means go back one directory, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that again in here. So if I can do, show me where I'm at, I can do cd GitHub. So now I'm in GitHub, right? So I'll do pwd and it'll show me that I'm in /user/cleverprogrammer/GitHub. If I do ... and I do pwd again, it'll show me I'm in /user/cleverprogrammer. So you see I went back a directory by doing ... That's what 2 dots does. So I'm going to go back one directory, then I'll say going to images, and then after that I'll say what's the name of the image? Tic-tac-toe, tic-tac-toe.png, okay, like that. And when I hit refresh, you'll notice that that tic-tac-toe image is now linked. So looks a lot better, to be honest with you. It looks pretty beautiful so far. Now at this point, it seems like all we really need is that nav bar at the top and better looking form thing, and our page is good to go. So let's do that. Let's get that nav bar. So okay, let's just go online. How to get navigation bar CSS. Okay, that's what I would Google. And let's just go in here in W3 schools, and here's a navigation bar. That's cool. Here's another navigation bar. I like this gray one a little bit. This one is cool too, but I like the darker one. So there's all kinds of different navigation bars. There's like vertical ones, and then there's horizontal ones. So we're gonna go and grab the horizontal one. So let's see which one. So it's this one. Okay, I want to grab, and it gives me the code for the bar. And if I just read the code, I'll try to understand and see how it's working. So I noticed that here they have the UL, which is unordered list. So what they're actually using here is an unordered list. Okay, but how does it look like a navigation bar? So what the heck are they doing? Well, what they're doing is that they're making the unordered list, but they're making it in a way that instead of the unordered list writing things from the top to down, it's writing things from the top to right. Okay, so from left to right instead of top down. So this unordered list is going this way. And why does it look like this? Well, behind this unordered list, you can actually just put this gray background, right? And you could put some padding so that this text home is not all the way to the left and not all the way to the top. So we put some padding from the top so it looks like it's in the middle, and we put some padding on the left so it looks like it's in the middle from the left or the right equally. And then what we can do is on hover, it gets this color. And then on hover, the news can get that color, okay? All of these get their own color. So that's kind of what it looks like this code is doing. So what we'll do is we'll copy all of this, okay? And then, so now here's another important part, right? You copy paste code and then you have to know how to use it. Now the only way you can know how to use it is when you understand how this all works, which at this point, hopefully you've seen enough to know how this is kind of working, okay? And just kind of get a feel for it. So UL in my HTML, if I make a bullet point list, this thing is already going to be working, okay? So let's just give it a try. Let's put a UL list here and let's just see what happens. Okay, I'll say hi, I'll say bye, and bring this guy here, refresh. And this is how this list is looking right now. Not exactly what we want. It's because I actually didn't save the styles.css. Now that I've saved it and I hit refresh, it looks like it's coming up. Now there's not a lot of padding here, as you can see. If I zoom in, there's not a lot of padding here. So we need to make sure that we add some padding. So let's go back and see how their example is working. Okay, list. All right. So when the padding actually gets added is when li, a bullet point, is a link. So if it's a regular bullet point, it'll look regular. You notice this over here? But if you drill in to a li and drill in with a link, that's what it'll actually look like. This styling is going to get applied. Okay, you can see over here. So now let's actually make these links. So I will have the same thing. I'll say A, and I'll say hi, and we'll do A, and we'll do bye, and I'll come over here. I'll hit refresh, and notice that styling just got applied to it. Okay, this styling right here. Boom, 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 boom. But if I have a regular link that outside of the unordered list, like a regular link like this, hello, it still just looks like a regular link. It's only the link that's inside of li. So you see how with CSS you can get deep into selectors, right? You can point it and get narrower and narrower with it. So it's pretty cool. I will delete this guy, refresh again, and that padding seems pretty cool. Now, what if you're like, hey, I'm not exactly sure how all of this is working. It's kind of confusing me. Well, I'll explain to you how this is working, okay? Pretty straightforward. First of all, notice text decoration is none. All right, so when I hover over these links, they don't have an underline. What else? Padding. I'm adding 14 pixels from the top and 16 pixels from the left. Okay, so what this is doing is actually adding 14 pixels at the top, 14 pixels at the bottom. So it's sandwiching the thing in the middle from the perspective of the top and the bottom. This 16 pixel here, what it's doing is adding 16 pixels padding from the left and 16 pixel padding from the right. So from the perspective of left and right, it's making it in the middle. So it's like perfectly in the middle. Okay, so to speak. How you can check it is you can right click inspect and just turn off the padding and see what happens. Okay, and even from here you can actually change the padding. So I can go right here and I can say padding, make it 20, make it 15, make it 300, make it 10. What does that do? So you can see how this works. And maybe if you like something more, you can come back to your code and make the following change. And if I change to 16, what's happening? It's adding a lot more spacing in the middle. You can also change the color. You can make it freaking green if you want, right? Double click, green. Okay, and you can see that now it's green. Hit refresh, and now it's back to normal. Okay, what is this display block thing doing? Let's delete it. So block is like making it a little bit wider, right? Text align center, what the heck is that doing? Doesn't seem like it's doing much right now. Padding is definitely doing something. Text decoration is doing that. So cool, now you've learned what each of these pieces are doing. That's how you're supposed to learn, okay? Not sit there freaking reading documentation for 3 days. So now I know what this guy is doing, but what is this UL doing, right? Does that totally make sense to us right now? Maybe, maybe not. Let's check it out. Let's hit this guy. So when we hit this guy, you'll notice that before there were bullet points by default, but by doing list style type none, it's now removing those bullet points. Cool. What is this margin 0 thing doing? I see there's a little bit of movement, so it's doing something, not exactly sure what. When I do padding 0, it's making sure that the UL has no padding by default, so it's overriding its padding. Cool. And what is this overflow doing? Apparently you can't even see this without the overflow hidden, right? So we want to make sure the overflow is hidden. And background color, important, right? So you want to have that background color, otherwise you apparently can't even see this thing. So those are two of the important things that you kind of need in there. Okay, cool. And then how is this working? So when you hover over it, it's changing colors. It's getting a little bit darker. Well, what's actually taking place there is that you have on a LI, when on a LI link, if you hover on a bullet point link, this happens. Okay, so it's a very specific situation when that actually takes place. You can even make it that the freaking background image changes to something else. You know, you hover over it and the background image changes to cats. You can do whatever you want. You could add multiple lines of code in here. Okay, so on my website it says Rafik Hazi, and then it says courses, and then it says hire me. So I'm going to go back here. I'll say Rafik Hazi. I will say courses, and then I will say hire me. Okay, cool. Let's look at it. Rafik Hazi courses hire me. There's one little problem. The bar is not running along. There's padding at the top, which we don't really want. And when I scroll up and down, the bar is there with us. But when I scroll up and down here, the bar doesn't actually stay there. So those are the few changes that we're going to need to make. Also notice that this is orange here, active, and here it's not. So we'll figure out what's taking place there in just a second. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this bar is by itself and not doing this weird thing that it's doing here. So how would I actually go and fix this? The problem I think that's happening here is that this bar, remember how we created this body, right? And everything that's in this body, it's supposed to be centered. Well, this navigation thing that we made is actually in that body, right? Inside of the body tag. And because of that, it's also being centered. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that the content of the website that's on the page is somehow being handled in a specific way where it's being centered, because the content is what needs to be centered, right? And then the navigation bar shouldn't be part of that content, and it should be kind of separate. So how do we do that? Well, how about this? Let's do this. Let's make sure that the navigation bar is in its own div, and we'll just give it a class of navigation. We don't know if we're going to use this class or not. Okay. And so we've put the navigation in its own class. That's not going to do anything, okay, right now. So even if you refresh, nothing's going to happen. And we're going to put all of the content in another div, and we'll just call this class our content. Call it whatever you want. I'll go at the bottom, whoops, and put it right here. Okay. Cool. All right. Now, if I hit refresh, nothing is taking place. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go in styles. I'll create a class called our content. And inside of this class, I'll add this stuff. Because we only want our content to be centered. Now let's hit refresh. And you'll notice that the nav bar now runs across fine, which is what we want. And our content is centered, so that's pretty good. But for whatever reason, there's still that padding at the top that you can notice, right? So we need to now remove that padding. We can hit inspect on this nav bar, and let's actually see. There's this padding on the top. If I remove that padding, notice the bar goes up higher. So let's actually do that. So this padding, this doesn't need to be added to the nav bar, but it needs to be added to the content, because we don't want this how to start from right over here. It's going to make it look really murky and mixed in with the navigation bar. So we like that padding is there. So what we'll do is we'll take this padding and we'll add it right here. Now notice that for our content, I don't actually need to add the font settings in here. And the reason for that is because it's inheriting from the body. Okay, because our content is a div and that's underneath body, it's inheriting the fonts from the style of the body. Okay, and now when I hit refresh, look, the bar is a lot higher. It's still not perfectly at the top, but it's still a lot higher. Okay, let's hit inspect, and you'll see that it says inherited from body. Okay, that's where the font is actually coming from. Cool. Let's go right here. So it's looking better at this point. So because of the line height, let's go. Nope, not the line height. Okay, now let's work on something else. So the bar is looking decent. We'll troubleshoot this little space here at the top and that little space to the left, and what's going on there in a second. Now let's make sure that this thing where it says Rafik Kazi turns orange when we or is orange the entire time. Okay, since we're on the home page. So what I'm gonna do is for now I'm just gonna provide anchor tags. Okay, so I'll say Rafe. This part doesn't have anything to do with it turning orange, by the way. Okay, so I'll hit refresh here, and now when I click hire me, you'll see at the top it has that anchor tag. When I hit courses, it'll say courses. When I hit Rafe, it'll say this. So anchor tags are cool to add just to make sure that your links are working without it actually directing you to another website, because that's annoying sometimes. And that's also sometimes they do that. You know, you've seen on websites, right, where it's like a one-page website and you click something and it takes you all the way down here. Well, how that works is you can actually provide this an ID of you know, hashtag courses or something. And so when you click here, you can make it so that it takes you to this div here. Okay, it's kind of like a selector, so you can just give it the action, hey, take me right there. All right, let's make this guy orange now. So I'll go back to that website, CSS navigation. Let's see what it says about an active link, right? So here I'm on the CSS, so the CSS page is green. How do we do that? So here's an example, active/current navigation link. It's just this line of code. Cool. We'll add it in somewhere close to that, paste it, and just say orange in our case. So notice that because it says dot, it's a class. And I'll go in here, and what I'll do is I'll just make this bullet point and make it from the class that's active. Go back here, hit refresh. There we go, good. All right, so now you'll see that this thing is perfectly orange, just like what we wanted. Okay, orange or not orange, or sorry, yeah, orange, cool. So our nav bar is looking a lot better. Pretty much exactly what we want. Okay, hovers, you click on it, whatever. And so right now, since we're working on the index page, that's why this is orange. If you were on the courses.html page, then on that page, you'll have the same navigation thing, but instead of putting class active on Rafe, you'll put class active on courses. And so then courses will be orange on that page. So when you click on this, it'll take you to the courses.html page, and this actually will be orange the whole time. All right, good. Now what we need to do is add in that bootstrap functionality. So then that way this looks beautiful and this button actually looks more beautiful. Okay. And you'll see what Bootstrap is. Bootstrap is literally just a CSS file. It's just like a really big CSS file. and you can actually just get access to it. So you know how we have made all these classes, our content, button hover, this special UL one. CSS is what is used to make Twitter, or sorry, Bootstrap is what is used to make, you know, Twitter as well. And you just get access to a lot of built-in classes in CSS and built-in divs and all that stuff. And so you can just use their already created styles. So for example, right, where we're creating this form or we're creating this button, we could actually just use a button right from Bootstrap, and we don't have to design our own button. We can just say something like button class Bootstrap button, for example, and it'll turn the button into a beautiful button that you didn't have to write any CSS for. It just kind of happened automatically. Okay, and that's what we're going after. So I'm going to come in here and I'll add in Bootstrap functionality. So what we'll do is we'll go Bootstrap CDN, click right here, and here is Bootstrap complete CSS. Okay, so you can download this file if you want, but I don't want to download the file. I just want to get it so I can link to it. And now if I go online and actually paste this link in, it's just a big CSS file. Okay, just a giant CSS file, and that's all of this. That's all of Bootstrap. You could download it and put it locally on your computer. I just like to link to it. So now let's go here. We're gonna say link. That's it. Okay. So this is an example of a local CSS file. This is an example of a CSS file that's actually hosted online. Okay. I'll hit refresh. And now notice it. The CSS got, or the styling automatically got a little bit better, right? You notice what actually happened at the top? Now there's no spacing anymore, and there's no weird padding at the top. Bootstrap automatically comes with a lot of intelligent built-in things. And when I hover over it, it turns blue, gets that underline, which makes it look nicer, to be honest. It changed the font a little bit, which is totally fine. Not that big of a deal. And at the bottom here, we still are running into this problem where this form is not looking nice. So we're gonna use some bootstrap built-in stuff. So what I'll do is I'll just literally type in how to make a form in Bootstrap. Okay, that's actually what I would Google, because I'm not sitting there making Bootstrap forms all day, so I'll just forget. I come across this, and this is a cool looking form. That's kind of what I want. I want an email address and I want a submit button. So I'm gonna just copy this guy completely, and I'll replace my form with that form, and I'll hit save. Okay, and it needs to be like this. Okay, there we go. That looks properly indented. I'll hit refresh, and now look at that. Look at that. It's looking really clean. If you want it like this, you could leave it like this. If you don't want the password one, right, we can just go in here, delete this, 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 and this, and that should remove the password. Okay. This is the entire email thing. So if you deleted this, it'll delete all of the email stuff. And if you delete this, it'll remove the checkbox. And we don't need the checkbox. We'll remove that. Hit refresh. The checkbox is now gone. So you could leave it like this if you want, but what I like is just the email bar with the yes give me button. Okay, you could decide to keep this one if you want. I don't really like it, and I also don't see the reason to put this email address at the top. It says enter email. Pretty clear, I think, what it's asking for. So what I'll do is, first of all, so notice something now, okay? If I do this, right, and I don't give it a class, and I hit save and hit refresh, this is your regular button that comes with your regular CSS, okay? If I give it the class that it had, this is a class that's actually being used from Bootstrap. And even when you hover over it, Bootstrap has its own defaults. I can even look it up. Bootstrap default, Bootstrap buttons. All right. And you can go there and it'll show you all kinds of buttons. So to get this button, you're going to have to do button secondary this class right here. Okay. If you want to get this danger button, all you just have to do is button danger. These classes are already built in. Isn't that nice? You get beautiful buttons that you don't have to design, that just come already built in. There's all kinds of other cool stuff that you can do. Buttons, you want a large button, you want a small button. Maybe if you want an icon on the button, you could put different kinds of icons on them too. So we'll just go back to our website for now. And I'm going to change this button to say yes. Gimme. Refresh. So now I got that button. That's cool. I don't need this line because I don't need to have that label. I don't care. I don't even need this ID stuff. You know, if you need it for later, I don't need this aria, whatever. So I'm going to delete it. Okay. And for placeholder, I'm just going to say email address. So I got the email address right here. And this is clean enough if you want to keep it like this, but I just want to change a few more things and I want to add the button to the right of it. So I'll hit, so that now that is gone. And I want this button to the right. How do I put this button to the right? Oh my God. Do I have to know this from scratch? No. Do I even know this realistically, honestly, right now? How to add this button to the right? Not really, and I don't care. I can look it up. Align button on same line. I'll just write like what I would write as a normal human. Bootstrap CSS, okay? Just fill it with keywords. Here comes a Stack Overflow link. It says, why don't buttons and inputs align well in Bootstrap? I tried something simple like this. And apparently, he got something that doesn't align really well. Okay, so look at this and then look at his button. You know why he got 236 upvotes? By the way, getting the equivalent of 236 upvotes on Stack Overflow is like probably 1 billion people viewed this thing. Because it's such high quality, like not a lot of people will vote, but when you get this many votes, it's like a lot of people. And you can actually see right here, viewed 281,000 times. Okay, so something that people look up a lot. The same reason why developers use Stack Overflow a lot. I use Stack Overflow a lot for this reason. I get my answers like this. And now he has some answer, and this guy's like, if you want to group the button on the left side, use this. If you want to group the button on the right side, use this. So cool. I'll look at this, and basically he's putting the class into an input group. So that's the div that he's actually using. Cool. So here, instead of using a form group, it seems like we're going to be using an input group. Okay, that's one insight I got from it. And then when he's making the button, what he's doing is that he's doing, okay, so input type, we have input type email. We don't want the text type because email will actually have an email field. And what's cool about an email field is that this is something that comes built in with HTML, is it'll automatically check for it. So if I try to hit submit, it'll say, hey, please include an @ And when I try to hit it again, it'll say, hey, please enter a part following the @ sign. And if I do this, you know, it'll go, okay, cool. So it has a few things built into it. Let's go back. So my input type is there, which is totally fine. But what I need, and this div actually needs to close here. Okay, so the button and everything else needs to be included in that div. The email and the button needs to be included in that div. What else? Type button, go. All right, now I need a span tag. This is important. So span class equals input group button. Delete this, go here, paste it here. Oh, sorry, indenting is just important for, just makes it more readable. And let's go back, refresh, and boom. Got this email address. This is to the side of it. Great. Do I need to go, can I go into a deep rabbit hole and figure out how it works? Yeah. Do I need to? No, don't really care. All right, so now our text is not looking as good as this text. So we got to just see, all right, what's going on? Do some more trial and error and get to the bottom of this situation. So we'll hit inspect and see what's going on with our styling. So line height 2.5 EM. What's our line height? 2.3 EM. So we can make it 2.5. Let's go back here. Let's hit refresh. Would it make a difference if we add it here? Yes, it does. So we'll make sure that we have the line height here. So our line height is now looking much better and a lot more readable. See, there's a lot of like trial and error, and you try some things and see how they work and what actually takes place. Okay, let's just double check if our font family is even being used. So let's go here, let's paste this. Whoops. So for whatever reason, our font family was not being used. Now it should be being used. Let's put the weight here as well. Refresh. Now the weight is being used. Okay, now our stuff is actually looking a lot better than it was looking before. Is there anything else we need from here that it's not doing? All right, so another thing is that notice on this page we have some space here, and then notice on our current website, the one we're working on, there's no space at the bottom. So we're gonna add some padding in the bottom as well. Padding bottom. Let's go here. Let's make sure all our divs are closing correctly. This div is closing here. Form is closing. This div is closing. Span is closing. Div. Body. Okay, and now we got some spacing action going on at the bottom. We can actually add some more spacing. I think that'll make it look better. So now we got some more, even some more spacing. So now I think this looks good.